Everyone out there who's watching, I'm Katie. I'm the director of programming here at Wicked Queer, and I'm super excited to have Q&A today with some of the people from the documentary The Whistle and from Unlikely Story of First Friday. Unlikely Story of Lesbians of First Friday, correct?
Correct.
Yes, so we have StormMiguel, who is the director, and Annalise, who's a producer of The Whistle, and then we have Kathryn from Unlikely Story, who's also the director. And we're also fortunate enough to have some castmates from The Whistle as well. So if you guys have questions, please put it in the chat and I will ask them as we go along. As I was just chatting with them beforehand, I think I saw The Whistle first and immediately loved it, and then watched Unlikely Story maybe a week later, and I just thought these two pairings together of these documentaries would go so well because it was such about finding a queer community, finding a family, and creating that. So let me start with StormMiguel. I guess, how did you decide, obviously both of you and Kathryn lived these lives in the documentary, but how did you decide to actually make the documentary?
I was a little bit pushed into it. I'm more of an editor and I like to kind of be behind the scenes, like post-production is my thing, but an old friend and who was a person who's we were actually like high school sweethearts, and I were like still very close, and whenever we get together, we just inevitably talk about old times and talk about the culture that we grew up into it too, because I think we really understood as adults how unique it was for that time. Mm-hmm. And her girlfriend, who's about 10 years younger than her, shows up toward the end of the film and came out like soon after us, like in the 90s, didn't have that community at all where she was from. She's from the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And she would hear us tell these stories and just ask question after question after question. And finally, one day she was just like, you need to make a movie out of this. You make movies. And I'm like, no, make movies. I kind of work on movies. No, you need to make this movie. And I was really hesitant. And it was actually Annalise who gave me the final shot. I was like, yes, this is a great idea and I'd love to film it. And so Annalise filmed it. She's our DP. And we had a really amazing time making this film. It was an awesome experience getting to connect with old friends and make new friends through the process. Like Gloria and I had never met before. And Rebecca and I did know each other way back in the day. So it's really cool to kind of reconnect and have new connections.
Awesome. How about you, Kathryn? How did you decide to put this together?
Well, about four or 5 years ago, a group in Roanoke, or at Roanoke College, started an archive of stories, of gay and lesbian stories from the Roanoke Valley. And it was mostly men. And so they did some research and they found out about First Friday. And so they made some phone calls, and ultimately I got called by somebody and they said, would you like to interview for this? And I was very excited, like, wow, we're finally getting some attention, you know, like, because we really had an awesome thing going. So once I did that and kind of came down off that rush, I realized, wait a minute, this really is my story. And I've been in television production since the late 70s. And so I thought, now's the time to do this. And so I started in like 2016, started working on it and finally finished it. And now it's playing virtually.
Yeah, it seems both of your documentaries are doing well and playing in film festivals and stuff. So how was it to actually start putting it together and reaching out and finding the actual cast to be in it? Because obviously I assume with both of you, they are all over the country.
Well, I can go first. It was great because a lot of us hadn't talked to each other in 30 years. And as a result of my starting this project and getting a hold of people to interview, we had a reunion in Roanoke, and it was so much fun. It was a weekend of just, you know, frivolity. And then from there, people have just reconnected a lot. And we found through networking how to reach different people and getting all the pictures and everything that people had. And for the retreats, the camping weekends that we did, we videotaped them. And nobody knows where those tapes are. And it was killing me because we couldn't find them. And I remember when I left Roanoke, I handed them off to somebody, but I don't remember who it was, and we can't find them. And then out of the blue one day, a friend of mine called and said, hey, I've got some film that I shot at the first 2 retreats. I was like, what? And it is brilliant. And that to me was the biggest gift. but it was just a lot of networking and finding each other. A lot of people are still in the Southeast, so in North Carolina and Virginia, but there were people all over the place, right?
Awesome. And what about you?
Well, so I initially thought I needed to find people who were like my age and 10 years older, because I really wasn't sure how far it went. In my mind, this whistle was happening within the decade, like that I had come out, and that I was, in my mind, kind of the youngest person one of the youngest groups to use it. So I started reaching out to people that I knew and that I went to school with, and was asking folks like Molly, who I think is on the call, was on the call earlier, who I should reach out to. And because I wanted to reach the other schools, like I was close to some people from the other schools, but I knew there was like a lot of folks that I didn't have contact with or maybe didn't know. And so Molly helped me get the word out on Facebook that we were looking for people who were in high school, who were at the Lesbians and in Albuquerque at that time. And so the word started getting out there, because I made like a little like teaser video, and people were like, some dude is making a movie about us on Facebook. And so I realized that I needed to locate myself a bit in that. And so I started to respond like, hi, I'm StormMiguel. I'm making this movie. I'm trans. I was out as a lesbian during those years. I was a part of the community. That is my interest in, kind of where I fit into this. And Gloria actually responded and said, I started the whistle. And I was like, what's the song? And so we started talking, and then, I think people who are here have probably seen the film, but she kind of talks about what really happened. Like, she realized at a point that, oh wait, no, that wasn't me. That my memory is kind of like, not quite like located, like she located exactly how it started. She helped us locate that. But the initial moment was like, she remembered something, and then she actually did a lot of the research to help us find where it started. And she helped me connect with a lot of the folks to interview and to connect with during the process. So it was really wonderful to get to meet up with people who I had never met before, and then also interview people who I knew, who I had some ideas of what their stories might be, and to kind of connect the dots, because Gloria's generation, actually, what I found out is that it went through the early 70s. This was not just like an 80s phenomenon. This was brought to our community in the early 70s, and that was really an amazing thing to learn in the process of making it.
I loved the high school pictures as part of it. I just love seeing the high school pictures and then seeing you guys. So let me talk a little bit of the cast. So Gloria, how was it like, being in this and then kind of seeing the final product?
Being in it, to answer that first question, is it was kind of nerve-wracking, because the last thing I wanted is attention drawn to myself, but seeing the final product, I just feel so proud. I feel so proud that younger people, even in the high school that I work in, came up to me to tell me that it was incredible and they loved it. And so I like that we're reaching multi-decades and just different generations. It's amazing.
And what about you, Rebecca?
I gotta turn it off. Somebody's coming with a flatbed.
Okay.
Well, for me, I found it really cool to see my old friends again. And one of the things I told Storm when he contacted me was, who wants to know about me? I'm so boring. But we weren't boring, we were just living day to day. But now we're encouraging youth to be out there and be themselves, where we were, and we sometimes had to be careful about that. So, not knowing that some of those code words and stuff were so important before, and now it's like, oh, okay, I guess we weren't so boring, that was my thing. I just kept saying, I'm so boring. What do you want to know about me?
No, but I want to bring Wrecked back. And I wrote these down to take a walk on the wild side. Like, those need to come back. Like, those do.
Yes.
And now is Molly is that who's driving? I don't have a name. Does anyone see who's driving? Molly. Oh, I was gonna ask her. Yes. So as I had stated before, both of your projects are about that you guys made this community and found a community. And I think maybe somewhat today that is lost. And I think watching both of these, I find them unique. And I also feel like I'm jealous as a lesbian that we necessarily don't have that right now. I even texted some of the girls on the team. I was like, we are doing a retreat, a lesbian retreat next summer. Like, I'm going to put it together. Like, just like watching the old footage and just seeing how much fun everything was, just, I think is amazing. Like, do you guys now, obviously making the movie and then watching it, realize how unique of time that was for you both?
Absolutely. I left Roanoke in 1989 and have lived in a number of different cities. And I've never found the same kind of community. I think part of it, though, is the time. I think that there were a lot of really strong lesbian communities in the 80s because we didn't have anything else other than the bars and softball. And so a lot, like I've talked to women from a lot of other cities who have said, oh yeah, we had a group in Wichita, or we had a group, you know, here or there. But I think that it's really important, as Rebecca mentioned, I believe, that the younger people are seeing this because it's a slice of our history. And as things change and it's easier to be out and people aren't necessarily embracing the word lesbian anymore. People are, you know, they're queer or non-binary or, you know, whatever it is. I'm really proud of the fact that I'm a lesbian. I'm a big dyke, you know, and I feel like the women who put the L into LGBT need to be celebrated. And so that's part of what I hope to do with this documentary.
Amazing. And what about you, StormMiguel?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a different time. You know, even looking back then, because as we were talking, I was thinking about, like, what was it though about like lesbian community and the ways that lesbians hung out at the time. And, you know, when you see the bar scene in The Whistle, it shows all the different bars. Really, most of those were gay men's bars. Most, like, over time, like, those are the bars that lasted the longest. There was a couple lesbian bars, but I feel like there was something about the culture that gay men, and I don't, this isn't like a positive or a negative, but the culture was like bars and cruising in a lot of ways. And I know that when I was like identified, we weren't always welcome in the gay male bars. We would go in and party there. And it's like, if you're going to have 10-cent beer night, of course the dykes are going to show up. But they didn't tend to always like it when we were there. So there was some tension, some fights on occasion. It was the 80s. But so I think that lesbians, the culture was hanging out, having potlucks, having music festivals, camping together. It was, and I'm not saying that gay men didn't do this, but there was just something that was about the culture that it wasn't as much a bar culture, even though we did go to bars clearly. But there was other ways of connecting that were happening. And so yeah, it was unique for the time. It was unique for the places we were at. I feel like I would tell people stories about us in high school, about the Whistle, about the Code. Come to San Francisco, meet all people from all over the place. Share stories, because we all do that when we meet folks, right? We share coming out stories. And every time I told the story of that time, people were like, wait, what? You had a whistle? Huh? There were how many of you? And these are people who came out all over the place. Or like, I didn't come out in high school because I didn't know anyone like me. And these are stories I heard so often. So I think that there were these pockets of like hidden community that were really unique. I don't think that was happening all over the place in big ways. I think it was happening, but I just think we don't hear about it. We hear about the bigger scenes. We hear about urban areas. There.
And to go off on that, oh, Kathryn, do you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to add that I think one reason that these communities, and First Friday for sure, were important was, you know, it was at the time when women were just really entering the workforce. You know, feminism was really strong back then in the women's movement. And so a lot of us in our early 20s were, you know, starting our careers, and all were working in jobs that had traditionally been for men only. And so we really supported each other in our careers and in being in that position where it was hard. You had to be 150% better if you were a woman trying to do these jobs. And so we not only did we provide a social outlet, but we helped each other through other parts of our lives, in particular our careers.
And to the team from the Whistle, like touching upon what you guys were saying before, do you think if this hadn't existed at the time that you guys wouldn't have come out when and how that you did?
I'm going to let Rebecca or Gloria speak to that.
For me, definitely no, because I needed those codes, because I was quite the lipstick lesbian is what I called myself. And I wouldn't have met anybody if I didn't have, because I'm somewhat shy, and that allowed me to take that extra step. So I needed those codes, definitely. How about you, Gloria? Is she still off? Maybe she's off.
And for me, it was a little bit different, and I kind of explained that a little bit in the Whistle. I think my parents always knew that I was gay because my first girlfriend I had from Head Start until I was 9 years old, and so so in high school, when it actually really when I could put words to it and what it was, my mom was just like, yeah. You know, like she knew all along. And I didn't really have to come out to her in a sense. She just kind of knew. But for the rest of my friends, definitely needed the code. That's why we came up with all that code of Rec for Days, taking a walk on the wild side. We even had codes for like smoking pot and smoking cigarettes. You know, we'd say, let's go cope a tab so that the teachers wouldn't know that we were going to go smoke a joint. You know, I mean, just stuff like that, all kinds of code. but definitely we had to protect ourselves, or at least most of my friends did.
And Molly?
For me, we didn't need the code. I think I was extremely fortunate. There was probably 15 to 18 lesbians in my high school, and we just supported each other. We all knew the community, we knew the codes, but I would have still come out. We were strong enough to where kind of folks knew, hey, that's our wall. The jocks, everybody knew, so it just sort of left us alone, I guess, for lack of better words.
I know, I love that image of the animation image of, you know, all the little walls, and you guys had like the lesbian walls. Kathryn, with the retreats in specifically of how did they come about, and how did you manage like 150 people and just seeing all these people coming from different communities and hearing about it, and just how did that all work?
No, the community of women involved in First Friday were a bunch of worker bees. And so we were sitting around a restaurant talking, wouldn't it be fun to have a big camp out? Well, yeah, let's do it. Okay, what should I do? And everybody just contributed their skills. So I was involved with pageantry. And, you know, another woman was the mailing list, and another woman was doing the workshops. And so we all just tapped into our skills and to make it happen. Now, our first one, there were only 30 women there. And the next year, there were a little over 100. And then we got up to 250 at one point. It was amazing because word just spread. So we were getting people from 3 and 4 different states to come to a little southwestern Virginia campground. So it was very organic. We developed this mailing list, and so we could get the word out of where our First Friday parties were, you know, on the first Friday of every month. And then we ultimately had a newsletter. And so all of that helped to build the base of people who came and played with us.
I love the dance pictures and some of the women in the tuxes, and they were just, and like, was it Brenda's 50th that you guys all went out for?
Yes,
Yeah. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about, again, just, I guess, how, you know, specifically in Unlikely, how these women came for the weekend, and then you guys touched upon how some of them had to basically go back into the closet when they left that weekend. And then, you know, kind of same thing with the whistle, that you guys had this community when you guys were together, but then when you didn't, you know, there were some stories about bullying and stuff. Like how do you guys, you know, feel about that?
There were very few of us who were out on the job. You know, I can't really think of anybody. Like one woman is a psychologist, and so she didn't have anything to worry about. But other than that, we all had jobs in the straight world, and so none of us were out. But some people had it harder than others, and especially the women who came from really small towns. Roanoke wasn't that big, but people came where they didn't have any contact out in the world with other lesbians other than these retreats. And some of the women came and they were afraid and they were nervous, but they were embraced, and we tried really hard to make sure everybody felt comfortable, and tried to introduce people to other people. Oh, you're from Tennessee, or she's from Tennessee, you know, things like that. And that really helped build the camaraderie and the, you know, sisterhood, if you will.
And how about you guys from the whistle? How did you feel maybe when you were outside of this community?
I'd like to just add on to what Kathryn said.
Yep.
I think these kinds of gatherings were going on probably all across the country. In New Mexico, there were things like the Women's Fest, the dog parties, and they were these gatherings that just started small, but they grew really big in the short amount of time, because I think people were looking for safe places to be. And when they'd hear about them, they would go to them, and then they tell someone else, and they got so big and kind of unmanageable because they were so big.
Too many women.
Summer solstice. Yep,
Yeah,
summer solstice was huge.
Summer solstice,
That was
same
huge.
thing. Mhm.
And for me, I didn't get in the line that had the flight or fight. I was just given all fight, so I would never fly. Bring it. You got something to say to me, say it.
There's something about us all being teenagers
Let's have a
too.
dance.
What you
Yeah,
about
my
being
sister was the
teenager?
one that was bullied.
Just that we were all teenagers. It's a very different thing. I think about Kathryn talking about people kind of having to navigate their jobs and careers. And we were navigating school, high school, we were navigating our home. But in Albuquerque, a lot of us were just, I can't believe how many of us came out to our parents in the 80s and in the 70s apparently too. And that's not to say there weren't consequences or pushback. Like I know a lot of friends who didn't graduate high school because they got kicked out of their houses while they were going, you know, in high school still, but there were places for them to go. Like, I don't feel like many of us who were out in this particular scene were closeted much anywhere. We weren't super out at school. Like we weren't like wearing shirts that like had symbols or rainbow flags or whatever in high school. That was the 90s. We weren't doing that, but we were all hanging out together, and we were not necessarily, we had code, we needed code, but I just don't feel like any of us were retreating into anything very much.
It seemed like there's a theme between a lot of the cast members that you guys were forced to go to some sort of therapy by your parents, and a lot of it was the therapist obviously sided with you guys, which, you know, thank God. But, you know, how was that for you guys?
I know for me, well, when I always thought that was just my story, that the therapist was like, okay, but you're fine. Because I remember when my mom told me I was going to therapy was not something we talked about. I don't know that anybody in my family had ever gone to therapy until I came out, really. And then my mom said you had to go to therapy, and it was so just like, no, you can't, like, how can you make me do this thing? Like, who would ever have to go to therapy? And so it wasn't like something that seemed like a common thing. So it's really, I always thought my story was really unique, that I did go to a therapist, and she said, there's nothing wrong with you, and you don't have to change unless you want to, and that's only for yourself. And to my mom, like, you should come back. And my mom was just like, oh, no way. And so hearing that story from everybody else that we talked to just blew my mind. I had no idea that other people were going through that experience at the same time.
I'm a clinical psychologist by trade, and so I know that for us behind the camera, by the time the like second and third of those therapy stories started coming through, we were just kind of like looking at each other like behind the camera, like what was going on in these training programs in New Mexico that they were really training their therapists.
Was it the same therapist?
But it's very heartening for me because I think we often get to hear the stories that are about the sort of tremendous harm done by conversion therapy.
Totally.
And there's something about that teaching experience of like, but look what happens when in Gloria's case, you have a supportive parent. Look what happens in so many cases when there's a mental health counselor who's really there to like advocate for the fundamental humanity of their patients or clients. And the site of resilience and the kind of pivot moment for so many people that having that resource is its own teachable moment. We tend to teach through the trauma, but I was really excited that there got to be this story that was a kind of not expected for the time resiliency. It was, yeah.
I totally agree. When it kept coming, and multiple cast members were saying that, I was like, that is amazing. So how has it been? I know documentaries in general are usually, they just can take years and it's a lot of work. How has it been from the beginning to now being able to see it? And obviously I'd assume, you have cast members here and just being able to reconnect with people. How has that been for both of you?
I am very disappointed that I can't go to festivals. I have to say, but thank you for having a virtual festival. And my doc's been in a number of them, but there's nothing like finishing it, like working so hard and getting it done, and you're so proud of it, and you want people to see it, and you want to see their reactions and answer their questions and feel the love. And luckily, I attended a couple festivals last fall and this spring, but then, March hit and nothing. I had 5 things cancel in March. And then after that, I stopped counting. Yeah. It was so frustrating. So that's how it's been.
Yeah.
Did you, Kathryn, I'm curious, were there a lot of folks you lost touch with and then got to be back at, like, did it feel like a reunion for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was really wonderful to see all these people and to get caught up with what they're doing and hug each other and stuff. Yeah, it was great. Very nice. You?
Yeah, absolutely. And that to me was like, so during the whole process, like I feel like you and I are in very unique positions as directors, is that we got to direct these really personal projects that we got to kind of be in, we were a part of. It wasn't like we're going to this community and watching them have this experience. Yeah. That we get to participate in that reunion. And those reunions, I think, is really awesome. I'm glad you got to have that experience too, because for me, it's one of the coolest things I feel like I've ever gotten to do in my entire life. Like just getting to make this film and revisit this time in my life where at the time you're just living it, right? You're just doing your thing and it's great. But to be able to kind of go back and see how important it was and see how important it was to other people. And the process of making this film has just been a constant gift after gift after gift to hear these stories and make these connections and have these reunions. And excuse me. And then also to premiere it in Albuquerque was really amazing too. So just thinking of how it started with just us going to Albuquerque and filming, just like, oh, Annalise, let's get this landscape. Let's pull over and get this. These little moments of just like, we're just gonna start here. We're gonna do some preliminary interviews, figure out who we're interviewing, to being in the theater with everyone who's in the film and with our communities and our families and who really related and saw familiarity on the screen. Was just like this wonderful way to kind of cap that off. And I feel you, my heart is broken that we're not all doing this in person. Yeah. I'm so glad we get to do it like this. And I'm glad more people get to access our films because they're virtual, so. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, if you guys could see my reaction when I was watching both of these films, it was just, I was immediately gave them both, yes, we're screening. There was like not a doubt in my mind for sure. So to some of the cast of The Whistle, how did it feel to actually, tell your story and to have it out there and then to actually get to see it on the screen?
I thought it was really fun, and I'm I think I'm an investigator by nature. I have an investigative job aside from my school social work, but just delving into all that, just the stuff I had, and then contacting my old friends and stuff, and them looking for their stuff. We had like some walks down memory lane, just looking through pictures and looking through stuff. And so that part of it was invaluable, made a lot of new old reconnections. And then to see it on the big screen was a little bit intimidating, but I was so proud at what a great job Storm and Annalise did on it. It was just so incredibly professional and beautiful.
Rebecca?
Same here. I mean, I actually missed the festivals because I went to several of them to go do Q&A and to support and everything. And to see people's reactions, you know, people that I don't know, that I've not been in my circle or anything, to watch this beautiful film and be touched by it and to come up to me or ask me questions, you know, it's amazing that other people have gone through the same thing a lot of us went through back in the 80s or when we came out. You know, a lot of people have their own coming out stories, but some of them are similar. And that was, you know, very interesting to me. I was touched by so many questions that I got during the festivals.
Molly?
I was in complete awe when I saw the finished project. It was surreal being there to see all the work you all put into it. Just the comic piece of it was beyond extraordinary for me. I just sat there thinking, holy smokes, this is other words explicit in my voice that spoke in my head. Good job, dang guys, way to rock it. And I think for me, I really made it a point to have my mom and my aunt and some cousins attend, and to give them a part of that was big, because I don't think they really understood the hardships that we really went through. And, you know, of course, when I was, 15, 16 and you're coming out, it was basically a fight with my family, or still, again, the phase has never ended. And having them there, and then afterward looking at us and myself and my sister and just say, wow, thank you for sharing that. We never knew that. And it was something we couldn't articulate, I guess, at the time. So thank you for being able to put that in an artistic form that they understood. It was very cool, actually.
And I hope you guys also, realize kind of the importance of seeing you guys as teenagers, coming out at such a young age and being so fearless about it, because, I was not out in high school at all. I didn't come out to my early 20s, and just, I'm hoping, having younger people see this and seeing that you guys, made this community, I think is, it's really amazing, especially for the time that this happened.
I was just going to chime in on the festival circuit this year and say that I think queer film festivals are really special and unique festivals. So I think we're feeling it in like festival world. I know I had it wasn't a non-queer project because I made it, but I also had a project that like missed its circuit this year. Mm-hmm. And it missed the mainstream circuit, but it didn't feel like the same kind of loss that losing the queer festival circuit this year feels like. And that's not just as a filmmaker, that's as a participant. Yep. And I think that's maybe for a lot of us, we're all of the age where those film festivals came up at a time when it still wasn't safe to congregate. Mm-hmm. And often that was our time in a way that wasn't a bar, to be able to come together and hear each other's stories. And I just think about the times that I've spent at the Castro Theater, just like among all of my people, getting to watch our stories. And so there is something that feels especially challenging about the ways that we've lost queer film festivals this year. Because I think that in-person queer film festivals, because it remains one of the spaces where we come together and then witness each other in a way that I don't think we do in queer community in any other way. So I love that it's been online, and I love, like StormMiguel says, the accessibility of it. And I know that I've been definitely missing, both as a filmmaker, but also as an audience member, that community this year.
For sure. We all like met because, you know, we're just used to having an open night party and stuff. So we all had like an opening night party on Zoom, and we're all just like, you know, we have actually physically, we were going until, you know, 2 weeks beforehand. So that's the last time we've seen each other. So it's all been through Zoom, and I totally understand. So for the both of you as well, I hope you guys understand, like, you guys just, you know, encapsulated this moment in time that now you guys have forever, especially that you guys lived this. So do you guys, like, you know, I guess, feel how important and special that is for the both of you, that you created a documentary that's partially about your life that, you know, the world's going to see, but also you're going to have forever, and just, you know, to show your kids and stuff like that?
Yeah.
It's
Yep,
just not
I can't
many
wait till
people
my daughter's
do it,
about
really.
11.
It's amazing.
You know, I've made a couple other documentaries, but long expanses of time in between them.
Mhm.
And it's really, for me, it's really important to put our faces, lesbian faces, out there
Mhm.
for people to see. The last one I made was called the Lesbian Centennial Project, and I interviewed 100 lesbians in 1999 and put it together about what they thought the most important things were in the century, in their lives, and in going into the next century. And it's a snapshot of, you know, the entire century of different things that happened that affected us as lesbians. And to me, it's so valuable because it was like holding a mirror up to the community, because I tried to be as diverse as I could be, socioeconomically, geographically, age-wise. I'm very proud of that. And the same with this one, because it again captures some lesbian history that isn't necessarily known.
Mhm.
And now, yes, it will be out there for people to see, and that's awesome. You know? Yeah.
Yes, I feel very similarly. I do feel like, you know, it's sometimes we make projects and we're just like, oh yeah, you know, I made a project, and feel maybe like, okay, I'm, you know, I'm not a director in a big way. Like I'm like I said, and I'm becoming that more, but I don't, it's hard to see myself as that. And so I feel kind of like humble about it and saying like, oh yeah, I made this film. But with this film, I feel so proud of it and feel so excited by it. And I hear other people feel the same. Like, so I get this feedback from people who weren't a part of that community, which is validation that I'm not just like super biased, but I am biased. And so when I hear people's kind of response to it, and then I hear the impact it had on the people who were in it, and I hear the impact it had on community in Albuquerque, who are like, oh my God, that's us. I feel like, oh, this is a big deal. And I feel really okay saying like, I'm really proud of this project and I want everyone to see it. And I even feel okay being a little bit like, oh, you didn't accept it into your festival? Did you not watch it? And that's just because these stories are so awesome and everybody who's in it is just so wonderful that I want it to be seen by as many people as possible, because I do feel like I feel very proud of this moment in time that I got to be a part of it, and that like excited about people who will find nuggets in it that they can relate to, or that reminds them of like what they did, and that shows people who weren't alive at that time what kind of came before, and what shows people who were older than us what came after too, because there are people who, like Havens, the teacher in the film, she talks about her connection to us, but she had no idea we had this code. She didn't know we had the whistle. She didn't know that we were using language. She didn't know that the ways that we were like hanging out and meeting. She knew we were there and she had relationships with some of us, but like she didn't know about a lot of it until the film was made, until we started talking about it and meeting. And so I feel very proud that gets to be now a part of the LGBTQ canon, right? And yeah, and same with First Fridays. Yeah.
For the both of you, do you guys, I know it's tough to be filming now or even probably thinking about another film, but do you guys have anything that you're thinking about doing in the works?
I'm working on a profile of my lesbian aunt who passed away a few years ago. But she was my muse.
Oh.
That's her, and that's my daughter who's now 17. So, but she was an artist and she lived off the grid in Arkansas, and she was a lesbian. And I shot for many years. I shot video with her, and now I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. So I've had all the tapes transferred, digitized, and now I'm scanning pictures and transcribing, and we'll see what happens with that.
Awesome.
I'm working on, we're in the, I don't know what stage we're in with COVID at this point, but we are in a stage of a documentary about Sean Dorsey, who's the kind of one of the most prominent trans choreographers and dancers in the United States. And so that's gonna be a documentary. And then also there's another Albuquerque project that I'm kind of just starting to put my feelers out about. It's gonna be a much smaller project, probably like a photo essay type project where there's like collage and then people's interviews in audio. And that's not just because of shelter in place and because it's, I mean, it's helpful that we are in this format, but it's something that I thought about a while back of, because there's some really beautiful photographs of a particular group of lesbians in Albuquerque that were around in the late 80s and 90s.
Awesome. So we need to wrap it up, but I want to tell everyone out there who's watching that we will be offering these both films for the rest of the festival. So you guys can go to our website at wickedqueer.org or Reverie TV, and you guys can purchase the ticket and you'll get to see both of these documentaries. I want to thank you guys all for coming on and sharing your stories on the screen and with us right now. Again, I know I've said this a million times, but I loved both of these documentaries, and I'm so fortunate that you guys submitted to this festival and that we got to screen it, and hopefully you guys will actually get to screen it in theaters sometime soon as well. But appreciate you guys all taking the time, and well done, and congratulations to the cast. You guys were amazing and loved hearing your stories as well.
Thank you. Thank you for loving it. Loving both.
You're welcome.
And how do I get a t-shirt?
It.
I'm loving your t-shirt.
I could probably get you one, send you one. I know some people.
Great. It was nice to meet you all.
It was
Nice
great
to
to meet you all.
meet you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Wicked Queer.
Thank
you
you.
all. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.